Okay, let's get started. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar hosted by Social Finance Topical Interest Group of American Evaluation Association. My name is Ichiro Toda with Independent Evaluation Group of the World Bank Group, and I'm also serving as the webinar co-chair of the Social Finance Topical Interest Group. To help us get to know one another, we would appreciate it if you can rename yourself on Zoom to include your name and organization name. For those of you that are not familiar with um, the American Evaluation Association, is a professional association of evaluators devoted to the application and exploration of evaluation as a profession. Please learn more about American Evaluation Association. Here, I'm putting the link in the chat. Okay. The Social Finance Thematic Interest Group is a group of AEA members who are interested in the topic of social impact measurement and management and exploring the interplay between the social and financial return of investment. Membership in our TIC means that you want to learn more about evaluating the social impact of organizations that are aiming to produce both a social and financial return, whether you are at the forefront of this work or just learning about it. We are always welcoming the new members. Learn more about our TIC. And here, let me put another link of our social finance. All our webinars are recorded, as is this one, and you can find them on our website. Let me put the last link from me. This is the link for our webinars resources. And now, without further ado, please let me introduce today's speakers. We are very lucky to have with us Spencer McCall is the Director of Impact Measurement and Analytics at the GitLab Foundation, where he leads efforts to predict, evaluate, and maximize the impact of philanthropic investment that improve income for low-income communities. He brings over a decade of experience in global development and impact evaluation, with previous roles at KIBAR, the World Bank, and the Center for Global Development. Getika Malhotra is the manager of impact measurement at the GitLab Foundation, where she leads impact modeling, evaluation, and the Learning for Action Fund capacity building initiative to help grantees strengthen their measurement and learning practices. She has deep experience in impact investing, innovative finance, and gender-focused initiatives with prior work at organizations including IIX, Nicole Associate, and the Global Alliance for Mass Entrepreneurship. Today, they will be presenting GitLab Foundation's unique approach to measuring impact, showing how return on investment models, data, and continuous learning can maximize lifetime earnings and guide outcome-focused philanthropy. Now, floor is yours, Spencer and Getka.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the great introduction, Chiro. And we're really happy to be here. Just as a kind of housekeeping note, feel free to keep the chat live. Feel free to put questions in, comments as I go through the presentation, and Getika will be sure to kind of track questions, and we'll have some Q&A at the end. But excited to get started. Great, I think we're just going to jump right into it. But as Ichiro said, I'm Spencer, the Director of Impact Modeling at GitLab Foundation. Really excited to have my colleague Getika calling in from India tonight. So appreciate you coming on at this time zone. We're talking about our approach to social ROI, and it's always an interesting topic. And when you first hear about it, I think people have kind of knee-jerk reactions around why are you bringing in an ROI model into grant making or into philanthropy. sometimes it can be a lot of confusion around why math is kind of being brought into this. But I think for funders, it can add a lot of value. So for funders on the call, this presentation is really kind of showing you how to take this approach within your own portfolio. But also, I think ROI can add a lot of value to social organizations as well. It really creates a lot of awareness around kind of potential impacts. If you're looking at a lot of different options as a funder, you have limited annual budgets. You can't fund everything, and so it helps you kind of narrow your focus into what maybe some high potential ROI projects could be. We really like using social ROI models to create an apples to apples comparison across strategies, so we can put everything on the same level playing field around a small training program in Kenya that might train 10 individuals versus a digital platform in the US helping to expand access to benefits. We're able to kind of see those at the same scale and to make those trade-offs. It also really, I like being accountable as a funder to the results that we have. If we're making assumptions that we think something will work, if it doesn't work, I think we need to have that feedback as a funder and understand how we can change our strategy or work with our organizations to improve those. For social organizations, we find that translating their impact into an ROI language can resonate a lot with funders. It also can help you with your org strategy. If you have multiple programs, you might be able to do an ROI analysis for some programs and find that you have a really an outsized impact, maybe on like a health program versus a workforce program. It can help you allocate resources. But today we're going to talk a lot about estimating that future impact, what that methodology looks like, showing you kind of the calculations behind the scenes. We're going to go into these two North Star models that we have and explain how ROI connects to this kind of continuous learning culture that we have at the GitLab Foundation. My goal today isn't to convince everyone that you have to build a complex model and that this has to be the main thing that you do. It's really to show, I think, a transparent framework that I think anybody can adopt, and is really our tagline is rigorous but reasonable. And I think as we go through the presentation, you'll see why that connects. We want a model that works for nonprofits and funders and program officers. So for those that aren't familiar with the GitLab Foundation, really want to ground you in just like why we have this model and how does it sit in our decision framework. We just passed our 3rd birthday as a foundation. We have about a $20 million grant-making budget, and we work right now in the US, Colombia, and Kenya. And we're focusing on communities that are living below living wage in those areas. And our mission is really to improve lifetime earnings through access to opportunity. So we're really focused mainly on just income generation or cost savings. We're not really focused on health at the moment, a lot of workforce in general. And our North Star metric is for every $1 we invest, we want to generate $100 in additional lifetime earnings. It's our 100x kind of benchmark. This helps us be more transparent and I think direct in the trade-offs that we make as a decision. One thing that's really unique and that I'd love to get feedback from other funders is that we're a pretty small team, around 15. We have a 3-person impact measurement team, which I think represents a really kind of large portion of staff. I think a lot of foundations sometimes don't even have one kind of impact lead. The fact, I think, that we have 3 full-time staff members allows us to be positioned well for this type of work. And we really see ourselves as kind of like co-partners with program officers. So it's not really a divided team. It's working together for this kind of continuous learning culture. We do have everything we write in our handbook model. There's a link that you can find. You can see everything from our HR policies to our grant making strategies to real-time insights. We have kind of a radical transparency approach. And we're also really into partnerships. So we would love to figure out how to go farther together. The last thing I'll say is that it's really nice to be solution agnostic. And so this is, I think, what's great about the ROI model is that we're trying to understand which are the best interventions to improve income. It could have been microfinance circa 2008. It could have been cash transfers, more in the last 5-10 years. But what's great is we're not tied to any one intervention. We can do improve dairy farming practices in rural Kenya. We can also improve coding academies in Atlanta. So we're really kind of focused on just what is that income generation solution. What's also, I think, really it makes this ROI modeling more accessible for context to smaller organizations, is a lot of times I think the reaction is, if you're doing a social ROI model, you're only going to be providing funding to organizations that can do that type of modeling. So you're going to be basically to the top international NGOs will be getting funding. That's not the case, in that we've been pretty specific in having a portfolio approach. So actually 70% of the number of grants that we disperse every year go to laboratory grants. These are grants under $250,000 that may not have any pre-existing evidence. It's a high risk bet that the new project that's being launched may be successful. We have an evaluation framework with those grantees, but it shows that this model is flexible. It can be applied to local community-based organizations that may have less budget. We are the ones doing the ROI models, and we're able to kind of do it for those early stage organizations. You can see some of the typical impact pathways that we are investing in so far. It's been mostly workforce skills, kind of workforce systems underneath that. We do a lot of kind of career navigation, job placement programs, improving access to public benefits as well. But yeah, this tiered structure ensures that we can kind of take risks and then scale programs where that risk decreases. Just kind of give you an idea what this looks like. We provided a scaling grant to Career Village. They are kind of an AI-powered career chatbot that is could be reaching 10 million learners over the next few years. You can kind of contrast that to Build Her, a program in Kenya that is working with maybe 100 or 200 women a year to provide really great tangible construction skills in Nairobi. So totally different scale, but yet we're able to use a model to kind of flexibly estimate the impacts here. And I want to also be really clear. So now we're talking about, like, where does this fit in our process? So I find there's people that are using ROI models. There's either kind of like an ROI centric funder where you fund whatever the ROI model says. And then there's other funders that don't do ROI, and it's just based on your program officer discretion. I think we were right in the middle. We use ROI modeling as one of several inputs, but we blend kind of program officers' experience, their recommendations from other grantees that we're working with. We have a lot of advisory committees, and it kind of sits alongside the ROI return. So I would always recommend using ROI as like an additional input into your due diligence process, not the input. So yeah, so if you can mute, that would be great. Or get a cut off, if you're able to mute that call. Thanks. So one thing that's also really interesting is we don't want to waste grantees' time, so we don't want to waste applicants' time. So what we do is, at the concept note, we create a draft ROI model. So the process is the program officer might identify a great potential investment for us. It will come over to my team. We'll pretty much turn over a rough ROI model in a couple of weeks. And we are the translators. So this helps move projects forward without kind of wasting applicants' time to fill out a full application. And I think it's really important is that we don't ask or expect grantees to build their own ROI models. I think that can sometimes be a misinterpretation. Grantees can apply in how they communicate impact. They can tell the data that they have. They can tell whatever outcomes that they're able to communicate. The stories that they have, qualitative evidence is great too. We are kind of the translators. We're taking data from what's available from the application, and we're translating that into an ROI framework that's comparable, standardized across all of our analyses. So this is really lightweight, it's accessible. And again, it kind of fits that balance of rigorous but reasonable. And what I would say is that we are approving grants pretty quickly. Over the last 3 years, we've basically approved more than 1.5 grants every week. This means that we need to finish these models in probably under 2 weeks to kind of move the portfolio forward. And I would say that the ROI model helps staff understand kind of how much change there's been, but it's up to program staff to determine who that is and what that risk is as well of non-achievement in that final decision. You can see kind of us tracking the models that we've done every quarter. We're at about 234 models that we've done. As a reference, we have 140 grants. So you can see that we're doing modeling on grants that haven't been approved. So it's kind of our ratio right now. For other funders that might be interested in this framework, I really like the 5 dimensions of impact. It's been developed out of Impact Frontiers. Whenever you're looking at due diligence or even evaluation, you always need to ask yourself these 5 questions. What is that outcome that that organization is achieving? Who are they working with? Who's experiencing that outcome? How much is that outcome changing? And what is that contribution? So compared to what would have happened if that individual or participant or client didn't join that outcome, and the risk, unintended consequences. I find in general, like when I look at impact reports, everyone's really good at describing what and who. It's really easy. It's always, we're focused on health, we're focused on livelihoods, and we're working in this region or in the, with youth or women. But it's pretty thin when it comes to how much in contribution. And I find that funders might kind of skip over those parts, or it's hard to get to that. So we'll focus more on the what and the who. This is where I think that this ROI pathway and kind of ROI process helps funders get to the how much and to the contribution. So you kind of round out the 5 dimensions of impact. I think this also shows you where the limitations are. So ROI can really tell you contribution, how much. It does not tell you what your strategy should be, which populations you should be working with, and what those unintended risks could be. And then to kind of visualize what this timeline looks for my team, before the grant, we're doing this impact estimation model. When we approve a grant, we have a kickoff meeting to talk about what the measurement plan could be during the grant period. We have check-ins about every 6 months. We have kind of annual discussions every 12 months. And this kind of feeds into a steady stream of data that we can look at analytically to see which grantees are on track, or what those reasons for falling behind or succeeding are. Great. Let's jump into the North Star ROI model. So let's get into the methodology here. So social impact evaluation is another word for it. There's a lot of different words that say the same thing. You call it impact accounting, impact evaluation, cost effectiveness, SROI. They're all kind of saying a lot of similar things. But just to kind of break out 3 main differences, cost effectiveness, CEA, is really like, how much does it cost to achieve an outcome? This is really great if you have a non-monetary outcome. Like, how much does it cost to cost per life saved is a common one that you'll see maybe in like GiveWell's methodology. We've adopted that for one that I'm going to talk about, called like the cost to double someone's income for life, cost per DIL, DIL. That's a really great method if you want to look at how much it costs for like a non-monetary outcome. Cost benefit analysis is really that ratio of monetized benefits divided by cost. This one primarily is on benefits that are easy to monetize, I would say. That's why we focus a lot on income gain. It's transparent. You can understand the pre and post changes in income. Then the third type is SROI, which I think expands the horizons to non-monetary. So you can monetize well-being, for example. There's been organizations that have looked at, if you ask someone to rate their quality of life on a 1 to 10 scale, improving by 1 point is worth about $22,000 US. So you could monetize kind of health, well-being. I think the typical monetization of a quality adjusted life year is about $100,000 US in the US context. That kind of gets you more into the SROI territory. Where I'd say we're mostly in the first 2. And I also say that we're not inventors of this methodology. I think we see ourselves kind of building and innovating with the field. This is a bridge history of SROI and impact evaluation. Red F, a nonprofit, I think came up with the term SROI in the late 90s. I think Robin Hood Foundation New York kind of put out a huge publication, 100+ pages on how they do their benefit cost ratios. To call it a few others, GiveWell in the effective altruist space has really been a leader in kind of their cost effectiveness methodology. My personal favorite is the Global Innovation Fund's practical impact units. They have a really clever way of normalizing health and education and income on the same playing field. You can see a lot of different kind of funds and founders kind of launching that here. You also will have access to this presentation, so you can click on those links afterwards. Getting into the North Star model itself, it's actually a pretty simple like math on paper. It's benefits divided by cost. So it doesn't look that intimidating. I think that's good. It's like you can sketch out a back of the envelope benefits divided by cost calculation and see what you get. Like start somewhere. We define benefits as breadth times depth times durability. And our costs actually include our total foundation costs. So we have an overhead rate around 9.7% to manage our staff, our expenses, our technologies. We incorporate that on top of the cost of the grant to reflect the total cost here. Depth is the average annual income change per person. So everything we do, we translate it down to the individual person and what is that increase in their annual wage or annual earning. This is not simply like pre versus post. A lot of organizations will say we were helping unemployed individuals get jobs. So their counterfactual is a 0 and now they earn $40,000. So therefore our program is improving incomes $40,000. That's not what we do. We think about what is the marginal benefit that your program is adding on income to this individual's life compared to similar kind of pool of individuals had they not experienced that intervention. The number of people is specifically attributed to our grant funding. We can do this simply by what proportion of our funding is going to the organization. Are we 2% of their budget? If it's a specific project and not a general operating grant, are we covering 100% of the project? It's really important to also account for program completion rates. As you might start with 1,000 individuals, but once you get through program attrition and then job placement rates, it can get a lot lower. Durability, we consider a working lifetime of 30 years, and we use an annual discount rate of 3%, but it's really important to adjust this, so I'll go into that. Here's a really simple example, so we can just kind of go back and forth here. We start with depth. Let's say intervention has a kind of estimated causal impact of improving someone's income in the US by $10,000. So we could say they're going from a $35,000 occupation wage to a $45,000 wage. Our net kind of depth there will be $10,000. The number of people say that it's a training program, they're going to say we're going to reach 1,000 people, but our funding is accounting for half of that, 50%. So therefore 500 people. And then we also know that the kind of program completion rates, this is a very simple model to say, like that also includes job placement rates, it's 80%. So therefore it's actually 400 people that our funding is tied to. We can assume, let's say assume that the training has credentials that provide kind of lifetime premiums for wages. So we include 30 years of that durability. And then our cost is $500,000 for the grant, with the overhead rate of 9.7% gets us the $548,000. We divide those two ratios and we get 143x return for this type of project. Very simple example. In the presentation, there's also a hyperlink to our ROI template. Anybody can use our template. You can see how you fill out those numbers and you can get that same ratio. Of course, this is the easy version. How our analysts and how our team kind of gets to this is certainly a process. I'm going to pass over to Gitika to walk through that. I'm just going to focus on one really important thing here for funders and for nonprofits, which is the key is to always have the outcome be standardized as lifetime earnings. And we focus on that because if you're focused on helping 8th graders get better at math, you can't compare an 8th grader's kind of like learning outcomes to a workforce development outcome. You need everybody kind of be at the same ending point, which is, what does that adult outcome look like? So it allows you to kind of work across the age continuum. You could work with 25-year-old olds that are trying to transition to higher occupation. You can work with 8th graders that are trying to get better at math. But that really then depends on how comfortable you are as a funder and as a ROI modeler with assumptions. So if you want only direct pathway grants, certainly it's easier to model. You could use a direct training organization like Akira Chicks in Kenya. You can get verified job placement numbers, verified income data within 2 years. So like feels really good. Everyone kind of is aligned on what that outcome looks like. I think as you keep moving down, you have to kind of keep increasing assumptions, but that, I would say that's okay. There's a lot of academic literature out there on the connection between these intermediate outcomes and long-term lifetime income. An example is a great organization called Last Mile Fund that we work with. They are doing a lot of great work to help improve college completion rates through financial aid grants during enrollment. We've seen enough kind of long-term studies that increases in educational attainment can lead to higher earnings. They're not going to be able to verify kind of lifetime earnings at that point, but we can see kind of causal effects compared to peer students in their cohort that their financing is improving graduation rates. We can make that jump to lifetime earnings from there. You can keep going down to indirect pathways where you're going to have to rely on academic studies. There's been some great studies, for example, that high quality early childhood is linked to improved earnings as adults. We know that if you have universal childhood childcare, women are more likely to go back to work. They're more likely to, and parents are more likely to earn more income as a household level. We don't necessarily need to see that from the grantee. So it's just showing we have examples throughout our portfolio of where you have direct pathways and indirect pathways. The last one is kind of ecosystem impact. Systemic change is, might have larger scale if you're creating policy change or narrative change, harder to attribute. But we have done this. We launched, helped to launch the Credential Value Index with Burning Glass Institute, which is creating just a whole new kind of data system around how you value the return of a credential. And we think that we've done a good job estimating what those downstream impacts are. All right, I'm going to pass over to my colleague Gitika to walk through kind of key elements to keep in mind when you're going through these types of modeling.
Thank you, Spencer. Yes, so the three aspects of that go into our North Star ROI modeling are depth, breadth, and the durability, as Spencer mentioned, and we'll go through each of them, the key elements for those. First one being the depth per person. Similar to what Spencer was saying earlier, I think one of the starting points for us when we do the modeling is to identify what the impact pathway is. So we translate and we try to come up with a logic model to show and to understand for ourselves also what the program's activities are and what outcomes would they lead to, the intermediate outcomes and then also the final ones, so that we know where all we need to make adjustments and how the program would essentially generate lifetime earnings, as mentioned earlier. In order to do that, we also get some data from the grantees. There are times when grantees have already conducted some external evaluations or they have been collecting data over a few years and things like that. But there are also times when it is an estimation from their end that this would be the starting salary once students complete the program that they are being trained for. And that is the kind of the income data that we receive from our grantees. So usually it's a pre and a post income data that we get from our grantees, and when we include that in the model to have our starting salaries or earnings after the program completion date. But we do not just have only that, but we also try to come up and we do our research to be able to find a comparison data set so that we have a valid benchmark and we can actually compare the incomes based on what the estimates are that have been provided by the grantees. We do this in order to be able to have a counterfactual income estimate for our side as well, to be able to essentially estimate what is the marginal income impact that the program that we are funding will be generating. So finding comparison data set is something that we do also for the counterfactual income. And in addition to this, conducting a literature review is super important for us because that is when we try to understand what is the income effect of similar interventions if they have been conducted previously. There are also times when it's a completely new and innovative program wherein you are not able to find similar interventions. It is not that because we do not find the intervention, we do not find literature review on that, that we would not consider it. We are more than happy to consider it and ask multiple questions to the grantees to be also be able to understand for ourselves. But then we also mention in our modeling that because there it does not have any existing literature, we label it as a high risk that there could be an execution or an implementation risk. So keeping it all transparent and acknowledging the risk for a new intervention as well. And in some cases where it is not just about the monetary impacts, it's also about the non-monetary effects that a program would be generating, maybe with regards to improved health or improved social capital or agency and things like that. We again rely on the literature review to be able to analyze how can we be able to translate those non-monetary effects to the monetary value and add it to our lifetime earnings and how they could be connected in the future. So that's what we do for depth per person. Similarly, for calculating the breadth, which is the number of people that we are impacting, many a times it's not that when we are funding the entire project. It could also be that we are just funding a small portion of the total program cost. So when we do that, we try to like adjust our funding to proportionally to the number of people that the program would be generating. Maybe it's just a 5% organization, 5% of the program cost is being funded by GitLab Foundation. So we will only take attribution for the 5% of the number of people that the program is generating and not the entire 100%. Similarly, whenever it is available, whenever the grantee is able to provide a cost per person, we try to divide that by the grant amount that we have to again identify what is the number of people that we are impacting so that we are not overestimating or underestimating our costs and the number of people that we are impacting. In cases wherein there's a program that requires some training, as like it's very common for people to also not complete the program or to not reach till the end of the program, or sometimes it could also be that there's not 100% job placement, but the program requires. But for us, since we are looking at the lifetime earnings, we want that improved income results. So we discount our number of people that we are impacting the breadth by the completion rates as well as the job placement rates. Based on all the models that we have done so far, we have identified, and also based on the research, we've identified that the typical workforce training program has usually around 70 to 80% completion rate and somewhere between 50 to 80% job placement rate if it is based on different geographies and how it is. So that's something that we try to account for so that we are only accounting for the improved outcomes that are actually being generated by the number of people who we are supporting. In some cases, it's also that there are multiple categories of the impact of the program and they have different income outcomes. So it could be like a low intensity program that translates to or helps in increasing and participant income by 10,000. But whereas there's another program with the same within the same program only that is more intensive that maybe enables people to earn more 70K or more than that. So we try to not take one and go with it. We try to segment it based on whatever information is available. So it could be like we calculate weighted incomes accordingly. So if the 50% of the people are in the high intensive programs, or 50% of the people are in the low intensity programs, whatever is the different categories that are available, wherein we could try to estimate the actual results to as much accuracy as possible. We try to do that, so that again, to avoid any over or underestimation. One important thing is that there are many, like being at GitLab Foundation and as a funder itself, we are very open to innovation and experimentation. So we are all in to fund pilot programs. So there could be there we have invested in a lot of initiatives that are new programs, or they are in a new geography or a completely new organizations that's coming up to be able to fund to help people increase their earning incomes. So, but if we are doing that, and if we are funding a program that's completely new, or an organization that's completely new, we also take some attribution for the next year's impact, because as we are an anchor funder in this case, we try to estimate and take some proportion for the future impact that the organization would have based on the success of this particular program. So those were the key elements for breadth. Similarly, for the durability part of it, we conduct literature review to assess how similar interventions have created and have produced income effects in general. There are cases when it's a sustained income increase that you observe from similar programs. So that is when we take a consistent long-term durability, maybe 30 years, that what is the baseline, what you are earning in the first year after the program completion. We continue to take that for 30 years. But there are also cases wherein it's only initial year gains, initial few years that you have that, but eventually the counterfactual also catches up. So you don't really have as much income gains in the future years, maybe 10 years, 5 years down the line, those would not sustain. So that is when we reduce the durability to be only multiplied by 5, multiplied by 2, instead of multiplying it by 30. And on the other hand, there's another one where if it's like maybe a post-secondary education program, wherein the income gains that you're getting in the very first year would eventually increase in the future. It's a long-term investment. It's not just temporary investment. So in those cases, we try to still have our income gains for over 30 years, or whatever is estimated and shared by, like, what we find evidence for in the literature review. And accordingly, we've changed that to be able to increasing gaps over the years and not just the consistent ones. So it just varies, like based on the literature review and our understanding of the program, as well as what the grantees are also proposing. We adjust the durability accordingly. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I think there's a question kind of about evidence, risk, and quality. And so certainly there is, if you think about kind of evidence continuum, even though there's many different ways to think about evidence, if you look at this one model, if you wanted to only fund those at step 5, you'd fund Give Directly, One Acre Fund, Perscalis, Europe. Those are kind of 10 years of rigorous evaluations, and that's great. A lot easier to do modeling that way. One Acre Fund does ROI, SROI modeling themselves. You'd have a pretty small portfolio, and it wouldn't make room kind of innovation and new solutions to poverty reduction. So as you work with organizations that don't have that type of evidence, you're going to have to kind of supplement that with more assumptions. But we really think that this modeling can enable your team to be transparent on what that pathway is and what those assumptions are, whether you're supplementing that with academic literature, benchmark data, and also the grantees kind of like short-term intermediate outcomes. But as a funder, we also hope that all grantees in our portfolio are advancing across these steps over time. So even if you started with an initial pilot project, eventually you feel more secure in kind of that evidence risk as you continue. Now, we also just added a relative income change model. And this was from the kind of basic acknowledgement that if you're working in Kenya and the US, it's really difficult to do ROI modeling across countries. I think a lot of, like, Robinhood, for example, in New York is focusing only in New York. So their ROI modeling is pretty consistent to the population and kind of the income, currency rates, things like that. As we started to work across Kenya, Colombia, and the US, we realized that you can unintentionally bias your investments towards higher income countries and populations because you're valuing that dollar amount of lifetime earnings, not that relative improvement in someone's kind of change from where they are to where they may be. So you can see here, someone's earning $1,000 a year in Kenya, but increases their income by $1,500. It's 150% change in their annual income. It's quite a transformative change in that individual's life. In the US, if you're already earning $30,000, that's a 5% change in annual income. If you look at it through a percentage uplift, it's a 30 times more impactful to fund the project in Kenya. And that's something that we were missing. So we've added a relative impact model as well as another dimension to look at kind of like the transformational depth per individual to kind of balance out these two dimensions. We can see here now that if you just look at living wages in these countries, we were able to kind of normalize that percentage-based benefit rather than just the dollar amount. The way that we do this is we translate each percentage point as literally a point. So if an intervention can improve someone's income for 1% for 1 year, that's 1 point. That makes it really flexible to that durability, breadth times depth times durability. Is it going to be 30 years, 10 years, 5 years? And you can get a total number of relative income points for a project. This is certainly not as traditional when you think about ROI or cost benefit analysis, but we find it really powerful. It uses the same assumptions as the North Star model. We're just translating those assumptions into points. And you can see here, you could get how many points do you get per dollar. We translate it, we eventually get to this cost per DIL. So if you take the total cost divided by the points, you get how much does it cost to increase someone's annual income by 1% for 1 year. That is not an easy number to remember, 33 cents for 1% for 1 year. So we translate that for the lifetime 30 years working assumption, and then multiply it by 100 to get to the equivalent of how much would it cost to then have an intervention improve someone's income by 100%. And that's how we get to our 1,000 cost per DIL threshold that we use in our model. Great, I'm gonna talk about 3 quick case studies, I think maybe move into 1, but you can see we have 3 different types of organizations. Raising the Village has a tremendous amount of impact data. They have an entire impact team. They do quasi-experimental studies with peer villages in Uganda. Pretty easy to do that model. You have Digital Green, a new innovative chatbot in Kenya that's helping farmers to better understand farming practices. They might only have preliminary outcome data or maybe some data from a different context, like in India, before they came to work in Kenya. There's also Hey Mirza, a program that's helping to improve childcare access for women and households and new parents. They have limited outcome data, so we're reliant more on the academic literature. As you can see, like, we're really interested in what that income pathway is. I'm not going to read all this, of course, but you can see this is how our minds are thinking is how do you start from what the inputs of that program are and how do eventually do you get to those lifetime earnings? And then what is the data that you need to fill in those assumptions? If we look at Raising the Village, you can see this was the study that they had done with quasi-experimental methods. They were showing us that the difference in household income at 24 months was $2.23 a day compared to $1.37 a day for peer communities in Uganda, meaning the kind of causal attribution to their training program was $1.59 a day for those individuals. So we can get that difference here. We can also translate to a percentage change improvement, and we can kind of get that net income. We can also look at how much their budget is, about $15 million a year. We're actually a very small funder for Raising the Village at 1.6% of their overall program budget. But we're still able to then make that attribution claim that that we are supporting about 1,336 kind of households in that model. So when we plug in our inputs, we can see that income increasing as they have widening impacts to their program, and we kind of keep that number that we're impacting constant. And when you multiply the present value income gain year over year, you can sum up that this project would be estimated to impact, create about $3.7 million in present value earnings. Divide that by our cost, we get an ROI of 13. And then you flip it to the relative impact model and you realize this is actually quite cost effective. For about $346, we're able to effectively double someone's income over their lifetime. I'm gonna just, there's gonna be, I think there'll be links for these models. You can see our link for Digital Green, just working with thousands of farmers. They had done another study looking at the impacts of their programs in other contexts, and saw that farming profits had increased about 20%. And then we have Hey Mirza, a kind of an app helping to improve childcare access for families. You can see the academic evidence here. These a lot of different studies showing improvements on parental earnings by about 20 to 21%. That's where we're able to kind of use academic literature to look at that income effect based on improved access to childcare. So it's kind of different levels of risk. And I think it's really important to label your models on where that risk is. So you can have kind of like an evidence risk adjusted ROI model. I'm just gonna talk a little bit about the tools that we're using as well. We use custom GPT tools to help us with our impact pathways. As you can tell, that's a really crucial part of our model. We have core reference data sets like MIT Living Wages, Educational Attainment Wages. We use Tableau, Lovable, SurveyMonkey, and also Streamlit for making some kind of analytical and chatbot apps. And talking a little bit about how we use this for portfolio insights, I just want to show you a few screenshots of our data. You can use it, for portfolio levels and also strategic uses, as well as qualitative context. So I love the expression, no story without data, no data without stories. We ask our grantees if we can use an AI chatbot if we're discussing calls with them, and then we can use those transcripts internally to understand what that looks like. I'm just gonna quickly, sorry for jumping around here. This is kind of like what a chatbot would look like. This ties directly into our Google Drive folders, so we can save transcripts to one folder. It allows our teams, from the CEO to the CEO to any staff member can now access and quickly understand what are challenges our grantees are facing. They can ask about specific grantees, ask about trends in Colombia versus the US. This is all based on kind of qualitative insights that we're getting from reports as well as conversations. So that's the qualitative side. On the data side, we're able to map all of our investments based on these dimensions of relative ROI and absolute ROI. So we can start to see which of our organizations are approved only through that relative income transformation. Typically, our organizations in Kenya are that. Which ones are exceeding on kind of both dimensions and which are kind of North Star only dimensions. We're able to kind of group those by different categories like impact pathways. We find those that have kind of scalable benefits access, development systems typically have higher returns, predominantly because of the scale that they're working at. And we hold ourselves accountable to what the predicted estimate was to what the actual was. Every 12 months, we ask grantees to report what kind of outcomes that they're able to achieve through placement rates, graduation rates, income data that they're able to access. And then we put that back into the original ROI model to see where we are right now, I think we have about 38 grants that have data reported to us. There's obviously, this is a lagging effect. And we're also able to see which of our portfolios are on track to achieve their ROI goals versus off track, and allows us to kind of understand, okay, our AI grantees are typically in our future of work portfolio. They have the lowest kind of on track and lowest ROI success rates, but they also have some of the highest ROI models when they are successful. So it's pretty interesting to see the trade-off between, do you want to take a high risk bet on a new kind of AI tool that might only be successful 50% of the time, or something that might be more secure, like emerging talent demand is kind of our workforce training portfolio, has our highest success rate. So lastly, just to finish, and I'm happy to answer a few questions. If you want to get started with this, think about why are you doing this? Is it just I mean, you want to clarify first, like, what is the goal? Like, what is your North Star? Ours is lifetime earnings. That may not be the same for every organization. What does benefit mean? You know, is it health? Is it well-being? Is it lifetime earnings? What is that pathway? I think what we find is, even without doing any ROI analysis, what this has done for our team is to think through, say someone's, you know, we get a request to pay for a convening in DC to bring together policy leaders. Like, that needs to be challenged. Okay, what will that convening do? Will policy leaders be inspired to take action? Why would they take action? Is it their staff that's going to be at that convening? If you're going to be producing research, where is that research going? Is it put out in the world? Is there a nonprofit leader that's committed to acting on that research? It really, articulation of that impact pathway is one of, like, I think the best things about this is it brings the team to think about those downstream impacts. You have to be, and then I think really care about your motivation. Is it just for marketing? Is it for your annual report? Is it kind of nice to have that you have this great, I don't know, apples dashboard? Or is it for decision making and prioritization on strategy? Is it about accountability to results? So what is your motivation behind doing this? Look at the data that you have. Can you get started? Do you have already a great impact data set on each grant? How many people that are impacted? Do you have some outcome data? How do you normalize that? And then clarify your risk appetite. If you really need high certainty in these models, you're going to be pushed towards a few select really high quality organizations. And that's fine if that is like your risk appetite. You can also calibrate your portfolio so you have a percentage that's in higher risk organizations and some that are not. And then assess the staff capacity as well. This typically takes us 3 to 10 hours. We can do a full professional report in about 30 hours. Simpler versions can take just a few hours. Would staff be bought in for this? How would investment managers and leadership value these reports? If you're like to kind of play around, we have 2 links for you. We have a spreadsheet ROI model, and we also have an interactive tool where you can type in some values and you can get an ROI output. As well, there's just a simple app that's kind of fun to use. All right, I know that was a lot. We kind of went through the whole suite of impact monitoring and evaluation at the GitLab Foundation. But I'd love to answer any questions from the chat or anything live. I think
Maybe
Slavi,
you could start with Christian's question. I'll maybe voice over for her. For measuring impact per dollar with education grants, do you recommend using all of these 3, the CEA, CBA, and the SROI metrics, or there are specific ones that work best for in this context?
Yeah, education, I think one of the primary pathways, I think, is into improved kind of career stability, financial security. That lends itself into a cost benefit analysis metric. But I think I guess maybe an easier version would just be if you're looking at like number of students with improved learning outcomes, then that would be a cost-effective analysis. The cost per student learning outcome achieved. But I haven't seen one or the other used more commonly right now. So to answer, Slavi's question, that was a great question on kind of the assumptions that we use. We do map out the pathways for every grant that we do. We try to find that, we don't just rely on academic evidence. We don't just rely on grantee data. We find that assumption in the middle. Hey Mirza, for example, has seen some really high returns on their investments internally. It doesn't seem to quite match yet with what we're seeing in the academic literature, that 20% return. So we lower our assumptions based on that triangulation. Kelly.
Hi, thanks for the great presentation. I'm curious how you think about some of these like existential sector risks and if that's accounted for in the durability discounting factor. So for example, with AI coming onto the scene, we've seen that like software development isn't as durable of an occupation for people. So are you taking those kind of sector risks into account for the model?
Yeah, the model certainly can account for those systemic risks. So you can lower kind of that durability assumption. Like right now, that's what our team is certainly pivoting to think about, like, or be a lot more clear on why would these entry-level kind of software jobs be successful in this context. So it helps on the due diligence side, but yeah, I mean, the model is customizable, so you can decrease that. Yeah, you can also increase your discount rate if you want to kind of have that fade out higher. But we've seen that in our qualitative data sets as well when grantees are talking about that risk, and a lot of organizations have had to pivot their strategies to work with that. Great. Well, there's lots of resources. Thanks, Gitika, for all those links. Happy clicking and browsing. We have a lot out there. But yeah, hopefully that this helped kind of make the ROI modeling more real, more tangible for everyone on the call. You understand how we can kind of balance not just a math-only solution to philanthropy, but a balance between program officer and community values and strategy with an apples-to-apples comparison to kind of understand what the different trade-offs are between breadth and depth as a funder. But thanks to everybody.
Well, thank you so much. It's already noon, so it's time to end the webinar. I'd like to thank you so much for Spencer, Gitika, for your fantastic presentation, and thank you all the participants for joining today's webinar and excellent questions. We will share resources and video recording with those who attended and registered. And please stay tuned for future webinars of our Social Finance Team of American Evaluation Association. With this, thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye.
So Spencer, Gitika still already
I'll ask her to come back.
Yeah. If possible, then maybe you can also put the presentations and then maybe let me stop the recording.